Um, so for past week assignments, I've always done the editing of the video, so I don't mind doing that. If somebody else wants to go ahead and run this discussion and start off with asking the questions and then doing that, what is it, 5 to 8 sentence paragraph. And then I can have the video edited by tomorrow to be submitted by whoever does the summary.
If I do the summary, can I send it to you and then you can turn it in?
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay. I can do
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing, so then to start off, I don't know who wants to read the questions and go through that first. We just need to do like the introduction. So just like your name.
Hi, I'm Abby.
I'm Ava.
I'm Sherry.
I'm Patience.
And I'm Siglali.
I can read the questions if you want.
Sounds good.
I'm Sherry Nagley, and the questions that we're going to go over are: what are the major arguments of the proponents and the opponents of this development? What ethical principles are either validated or violated by this development? What code provisions or interpretive statements are either validated or violated by this development, which we are doing organ trafficking? And number 4, what are the potential outcomes of this innovation for patients, the healthcare system, the cost of healthcare, and health providers? Oh, and 5 is, how will this development impact nursing practice in 5 years if it is allowed to proceed? What ethical challenges will nurses face because of this development? And that is all.
So for question 1, so the article that I found was the organ trafficking and migration. So for question 1, the proponents argue for increased research and global awareness to protect vulnerable groups such as immigrants, migrants, or minorities from being exploited into organ trafficking. So basically how it's our moral and ethical obligation to bring visibility to a crime that exploits these groups, especially when money becomes part of the picture, which I feel is usually what leads a lot of like these lower income groups to get into organ trafficking, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you guys read this article that came out earlier this year. It kept popping up all over my phone when it first happened. And it was about these 3 women that escaped like a human trafficking, organ trafficking situation in the country of Georgia in Eastern Europe. I don't know if you guys heard about that. It was the human egg farm. And it was basically these women from Thailand that were tricked into going to Eastern Europe to become surrogates for couples that couldn't have babies. And it turned out that that wasn't actually the case. They were actually being held prisoners at that point. And they were being injected with hormones, and then their egg cells were being retrieved monthly. And then it's believed that those egg cells were being sold on the black market, which goes to show how these lower income minority groups are being tricked into like this human trafficking, organ trafficking situation because they're in a tight pinch and needing, that financial stability. And then in this situation, they actually didn't even get the money. They were just being held captive for, their egg cells.
Goodness.
And I think this is a great example as to why there are so many rules and regulations involved in legal organ harvesting and donations. Like here in the US, we have the organ transplant list, and there's like certain criteria that someone has to meet in order to be on that list. And then for the opponents for organ trafficking are like systematic barriers, so like lack of funding in these lower income countries that results in knowledge gaps, and then it supports for disproportions in global health research, as well as an underreporting due to legal and ethical concerns. And that's what I have for question 1.
Wow, that's sad.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just crazy. And it just makes you think of like what situations people accidentally put themselves into just because they need that financial help.
Mm-hmm. Did they ever get out? Did they?
So the 3 girls that escaped, I know the last article that I had read was that there was an investigation going on because there was like over 100 Thai women that had answered to this ad that was put up for them to come over to Eastern Europe to be a part of this whole surrogacy thing or ploy. And the 3 women that escaped were the ones that were like bringing light to the situation. I hope that the remaining women got out, but I didn't see any articles following up on that.
Dang. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you think too of like other situations that maybe aren't being brought up in the news for like these, these other countries that don't have like the rules and regulations that we have here.
I found an article. It's the human trafficking search, and it says that there's only one country that it's actually legal in, which is Iran. But everywhere else they have like stipulations to who can donate organs, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I can do number 2. What ethical principles are either validated or violated by this development? In the video I watched, it was based in Kenya, and they were these people that were trying to get basically people that needed money and talk them into them. They're trying to get these people to go donate a kidney, and they were told that they were going to get $6,000, and it was like $500 a month to live there. So he wanted to go and get a leg up because he was 22 years old. Anyways, he ended up going there, and he only got 4,000, and then it showed these other guys that gave a kidney too and got maybe 2 or 4, and it was for this company called Midland, I think it was. It was a hospital, and they had a legit website and everything else. But anyways, they ended up ripping them off, and then they got sick. They ended up getting sick, but it's because of the lower income they were targeted, which is really sad. But the ethical violations they had was autonomy, justice, and non-maleficence. So autonomy, there's many donors are not fully informed or pressured into donating, violating their true informed consent, which we saw in the video, which I saw in the video. And then the justice, the process disproportionately affects the poor and marginalized who become organ sources for wealthy recipients. And the people that were getting those kidneys, they paid like $200,000 for it. And they didn't even get the full, their donor price they said they were going to get. Non-maleficence, long-term health risks to donors and recipients are often ignored, especially with unregulated or unsafe surgical practices. And that's what happened to a lot of those guys that donated. They ended up getting really sick because of the procedure. That's what I have for 2.
Nice.
I also watched the same video. But
Did you really?
yeah, because I like seen it. I'm like, oh, I'm from Kenya, and like I know kind of how the system works a little bit. So it's like
It was sad.
yeah, it's very sad.
It
And
was
it's
nice.
I think
Oh, go ahead.
oh sorry. It does usually happen from like people in the villages because they're like less fortunate and they're looking for ways to make money for their family for like needs and everything. So that was
Yeah.
really sad to see.
It was. The mom was like trying to take care of him and, pay for her kids' tuition. And she had a plan for him to go to school. And it was like a day right before the surgery. He had it. It was just a sad story. It really was.
Yeah.
An additional one that I saw from my article was also the beneficence, because it's undermining the medical knowledge ignores susceptible patients from research and policy benefits is what I got. And I don't know who wants to take on the answer for 3.
I can do 3. or whoever.
You can go.
Okay. I just did provision 1 and 2. That's what I got. Let me see. Sorry. I put provision 1's violated because if a nurse, and I just used a nurse as an example since that's what, like, we're kind of basing everything off of. Like, a nurse would violate that provision because it's suggesting that a patient is either, it's suggesting a patient to organ trafficking, then he or she is like not acting with compassion or respect for the patient, um, which I think hopefully no nurses would be involved in that because that's like against like everything that we stand for. And then for provision 3, I said it's violated as well because the nurse would fail to protect the patient, um, especially if they're putting them in a situation where they donate this organ and then who knows how clean or sterile the procedure is that's being done, and then what happens if they get worse after they do it and it's like not work or they don't get paid or whatever. So that's what I put.
I also got provision 8 for that one, and it's nurses build collaborative relationships and networks with nurses, other healthcare and non-healthcare disciplines, and the public to achieve greater ends. And I got it because if the nurse violated it or like stays silent about the issue, like almost like helps a person give an organ that they're not supposed to be giving and then not talking about it, then they're violating that because that's not for the greater good of that person or the general public.
Mhm.
Can you?
And then also I saw provision 9 for mine because it failed to address the spread of injustice for patients that are being affected by it.
Yeah.
I can do question 4. It's potential outcomes for this development. For patients, if there was like a positive to it, it would be that there are more organs to like give to patients who do need it. And that would make shorter wait times on the transplant list, which could be a positive, but it's also more of a negative because of the risk of receiving organ from an unverified, unsafe source, and then complications after surgery because you don't know if it's sterile or not during that procedure. And then for like the healthcare systems, it undermines like the trust in medical ethics and increases potential for legal and international human rights violations because obviously you don't really know where these organs could be coming from. And then it's also increased due to potential risk plus complications of black market surgery. Like you have no idea where these organs are coming from, or if, like you said in your video, if they're getting paid fairly for the organ they're donating. And if it was to actually become illegal, it could cut down on some costs, like patients who are getting dialysis all the time because their kidneys don't function correctly, they wouldn't need that if they were able to get an organ. But that would kind of be it for that.
I put for like the cost part of that question, I put that people who would or this would cause people who do donate their organs through trafficking, cause them to pay more like in healthcare because what if they get like an infection or it like turns into like sepsis or something. So I think like that donating like that would cost them more in the end. And like, yeah, if you get paid, okay, but then you're gonna have to spend the money because you're in the hospital. And then for healthcare providers, I put that they could face many legal issues participating in acts like that because they're not doing it. They're doing it probably for the money and not like for the greater good of like patients and stuff like that. So that's just what I put too.
I also added when for the cost of care, you did say like it would go up due to like problems, and I also say like following up. I think I don't know what class we talked about it, but when people stay at the hospital longer, or they're often doing these follow-ups and everything, it just increases the price.
Mhm.
I can do for moving on, I can do question 5. Or how will this affect nurses in 5 years if organ trafficking keeps growing? I said nurses may have to deal with more patients like who get organs illegally. Um, they'll need to protect patients who were forced to donate. Like maybe like those people who are forced to donate, they come back and then they're having to take care of them. And if the procedure wasn't done right, there's a lot of complications going into it, which is really sad. And then they may have to, uh, depending on the hospital, they may have to ask them to report like organ trafficking. I don't know if it's for every hospital, like report any organ trafficking if they see like any happening. Like even if someone like comes in and they kind of state that they got the organ, um, in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put that together.
I also put that if a nurse like doesn't agree with like the organ trafficking thing, and they find out that their patient part like was either they donated to that or they were a recipient of like an organ that was trafficked, they could have like some sort of like bias maybe against them, and that can create an issue too, because it's unfair for people who have been waiting for on the donor list that don't get one, and then these people go pay like a lot of money just to get an organ, and they basically like shortcut all these other people who knows why they're not on the donor list. Like they could be like a smoker, or they could be an alcoholic, someone who's not taking care of their body, and they want and then they go and get this organ, but then somebody who actually needs it doesn't get it, and they have to wait. So that's what I put for that part too.
And then for the last question, I put so nurses may face moral distress when caring for patients suspected of being victims of organ transplant or organ trafficking, especially without clear institutional protocols from their facilities. And then ethical dilemmas may include navigating patients' confidentiality versus like mandated reporting, and then addressing cultural or language barriers when assessing these types of patients. Um, it's I'm like, what are the words I'm trying to use here? I feel like it's just a whole tricky, it's like tricky waters to try to navigate through, right? Because like you said, there's some nurses that might feel some kind of way, like maybe they have a family member that's been waiting for an organ.
Yeah.
And then now they're treating a patient who
Got
is
one
being a little
illegally.
sketchy about how they obtained the organs that they got. There's so many different things to consider too. Like we have regulations and policies in place to help ensure the organ in general. Like, is this a good organ to be transplanted into a patient? There's so many different criteria that have to be met. And I feel like organ trafficking kind of bypasses all those things. So like, who's to say that you're getting an organ that's actually a good organ? Like, what if this is a smoker? Like, like just like
Well, then
certain
like we
health.
don't know like also like if they have like what if they have like an STD, or like they have like HIV or Hep C or something like that. If they're not properly being like screened, how do you know you're not going to get like a bad organ that's somebody else had, and now you have this other disease that now you have to treat too.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
I think that used to happen, further back with like bone marrow transplants and stuff like that. And then getting it from patients that had other comorbidities and other diseases. And now that's something that you have for the rest of your life. There's just so many things to
I also put
consider.
it might be hard for the nurse to advocate and care for a patient who has like who's either um, donated like illegally or gotten an organ illegally, just because that patient may not trust the healthcare system. So it might be hard for them to figure it out since they had a.
Kind of on that topic, I put it'd be like hard for the nurse to, if they knew that the patient that came in had like received an organ or donated an organ, like do they do they have the obligation to go and tell like someone higher up that they know that they were like organ trafficking or a part of it, or
Mhm.
do they keep that because that's technically maybe HIPAA to themselves and still like have to care for that patient knowing that they gave an organ or they received an organ that could be potentially unsafe to them or the other person.
Mhm.
I think I also mentioned since it talked about hard decisions, I said standing up against like doctors or hospitals that are involved in like bad practices, because it's like if there's people that are higher ups, you get to you kind of get timid to like go up there to them because of the repercussions that you can get.
Mhm. And I think another thing to also take into consideration on the topic of organ trafficking is follow-up care. Like I think,
Mhm.
I mean, patients have to continue to see their surgeons years after they got in transplants because like organ rejections, like a big
Yeah.
thing. You need to be taking daily medication to make sure that your body's not rejecting the organ. And it's like, are these patients getting that aftercare? And if they are, like, is it legally obtained follow-up care, or are they still going to, whoever
Did the surgery.
and then who's to say, like, at what point, like, they're not going to be charging a patient more each
Right.
time, if that makes any sense too.
Yeah.
Um, no, this is it's a good topic.
It is a
But,
good topic. I agree. I didn't realize how often it's happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a growing thing too. It's not like it's going to stop. In the video that I watched, it said that the Midland or that hospital is good. They were going to try to shut it down, but they hadn't yet. So I don't know. It's sad to see that there's so many places that do it.
Yeah. Or there's so many people like even here in the US that like are involved in it. So
Yeah, and you don't even realize. Like, I saw the one with the women who were in Georgia too, because that was so recent, and it was so weird to see being like, oh, that still happens, and it's kind of like under the rug or like brushed under the rug
Yeah.
cases.
and on
Yeah.
the article that I read, I saw that it's estimated that illegal trade of human organs, generates about $1.5 billion each year, and there's roughly about 12,000 illegal transplants done.
Dang.
That's a lot.
Isn't that crazy?
that just like is really scary because like you don't know like what like I just keep thinking about like you don't know what they have, like what kind of diseases they have, if they have a disease, you know what I mean? Like, and then what if your body rejects it, and then or you have an infection and you have like you did all this just to get some money, but then you're gonna lose it in the end because now you have all these health issues.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I think of like
And it's
when I
also
think
like a whole moral issue. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to take an organ and not knowing how
where
it
you
came
got
to
from.
me. Like, I'm like, did this
Yeah.
patient willingly give any of these parts? Like the
Right.
women that were held captive for their egg cells. I'm like, like, I don't
That's
know.
so sad. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, like morally, I just don't think I would be able to just because of that. Like, I'm like, I know. I'm like, I need to know.
Yeah.
Right.
So
It's
the one that I
crazy.
saw too was like it's estimated that 10,000 kidneys are traded on the black market worldwide annually, or more than one every hour.
Yeah, kidney was
Wow.
like at the top of the
Kidneys?
list.
Kidneys on the top, I think, because we have two.
They're like, you don't need to.
You don't need to. You can just have one.
Right.
I feel like
Until you need that second one.
I feel like kidneys is like the most popular thing.
Oh man.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
What's it called? Well, I probably won't edit anything out of this video just because I feel like we're just at the time. So So one thing is that we all didn't say or introduce ourselves. I can go ahead and edit that to the beginning of it if we all just do it now.
Oh yeah, I forgot.